John Lennon, there is no doubt in your mind about the fate of Paul McCartney.
No, it's a joke, isn't it? I mean, Paul isn't dead, and if he was, we would have told you,
1970 radio FM is emerging. It had been around from a technical point of view since the late 40s, but for most of the 50s and the first part of the 60s, FM radio was either what we called beautiful music, the kind of station you would hear in an elevator or a dentist's office, and jazz, and classical. So the fringe formats.
Well, the 70s was kind of strange because that was a melting pot of music. So now, I mean, in 1972, when I started interning for Mark Perreno, and I would go to ABX, they were still playing. I mean, Jack Broderick played 4 hours of jazz music in middays on a rock station.
Yes, that's, wow, that's Fred Neil from an album called Sessions, and Roll On Rosie. Is that nifty? Yeah, it certainly is. Let's see, going back to 9:30, we heard the Beatles and then the Bob Seger System.
Going from the AM to the FM, when it went to FM, that's when everything changed. I think that's what really caused the whole uproar with the young people, was when FM started.
Companies, which were smaller companies back then, they said, well, we have this FM band and we got this hippie guy here. He wants to, play some wild records. So they just kind of gave us the FM band initially.
No BS means no better systems, no better savings. Mickey Shore. Gratiot north of 12, 4th Street at Eureka, Woodward at 10.5.
Mickey!
Mickey Shore, who originally started as a DJ on whatever radio station it was in Detroit, his whole gimmick and ploy was just to get on the AM stations and advertise that you could get an FM adapter or whatever it was to run on your AM radio in your car.
Back then, most of the cars only had AM radios, and so you had to buy an FM converter, and they weren't very expensive, but it was very cool to have FM radio in your car.
Come on now. The difference between an AM and an FM signal as far as audio quality is enormous. So as soon as ABX came about on the FM dial, you were like, this is what the music's supposed to sound like.
The ABX Air Raid continues.
You're listening to WABX. This is Karen Savelli until 10 o'clock playing the rock and roll.
She was about the only person I had to listen to as a woman. As a young girl, she was it. There was maybe one or two others. I think Lynn Woodison, maybe Kim Carson were on the air at that time. But as far as a solid, straight-on rock and roll disc jockey, that was Karen.
Back in radio's heyday, DJs were big celebrities. I mean, really, they were kind of our liaison between us and the bands and the music, and they talked about the music, and then of course they were interviewing the bands when they came to town.
Well, I could Tina Turner guy, that's for sure. Okay, let's fade that out. We got a lot of calls here. Number's 354 WRIF. If you're interested in drugs, what part they play in your life and what you think about them. We're going to take our first call.
Happily, to the astonishment of everyone, including the DJs, many of these people became very well known.
Radio personalities became celebrities when they started letting them loosen up a little bit on the air. No more of just reading the cards, you're listening to W333, whatever. But let them, put their own personalities out there.
Hello again, and welcome to American Top 40. I'm Casey Kasem, and this is the show that lets you know how your favorite songs are doing every week from coast to coast, according to Billboard magazine's national survey.
Casey Kasem was the first person who assembled a team of people who used whatever resources they could, which was basic clippings from Billboard magazine, the archives of Cashbox magazine, from the local library, and put those words together so that it was an interesting story.
You know what? Another thing came into FM radio, and it was called contracts and money. And the GMs realized they had better start protecting their talent.
Well, listen, we took all the disco records that you brought tonight. We got them in a giant box, and we're going to blow them up real good.
when I watched the Disco Demolition stuff, I was blown away. I was fascinated. And here's the funny thing. Back in the day, and I was more of a Tiger baseball fan and sports fan than a music fan, but this is where they met. Back in the day, they didn't show both ends of a doubleheader on Channel 4. They didn't show Game 1. So when George and Al came on the air, all you saw was a smoldering Comiskey Park.